Hello, my name is Bambang Nugroho. I'm a student at Almadan University. Here, I will explain two journals. The first is growth inequality and poverty, a robust relationship, and the second is quality economic growth as an indicator of economic development. So, let me explain you about the first journal. Let me explain you about the first point about the background of the study. The study is motivated by long-standing debates in development economics concerning the relationships between economic growth, income inequality, and poverty reduction. While economic growth is often viewed as the main engine for poverty alleviation, empirical evidence across countries has produced mixed and sometimes contradictory results. Sometimes studies suggest that growth reduces poverty automatically, whereas others argue that high level of income inequality weaken the benefit of growth. Moreover, much of the exciting literature analyzes poverty and equality separately, even though both are derived from the same income distribution. The author argued that this fragmented approach contributes to unstable empirical findings and limits policy relevance. Therefore, the study seeks to jointly analyze growth, inequality, and poverty to provide a more coherent and robust understanding of their interrelationships. The main objective of the study is to test the robustness of the relationship between economic growth, poverty, and income inequality using a comprehensive cross-country framework. Especially, the study aims to the first examine whether poverty has a direct and systematic impact on economic growth. The second, assess whether income inequality directly affect growth or operate indirectly. The third, identify poverty as a potential transmission channel through which inequality influence growth. And the fourth, provide stronger empirical evidence that can inform development policies oriented toward inclusive and sustainable growth. The third point is methodology point. The study employed a cross-country panel data approach covering 158 countries over the period 1960 to 2010. Economic growth is measured by the growth rate of GDP per capita, income inequality is processed by the Gini coefficient, and poverty is measured using poverty headcount ratios based on international poverty lines. The fourth point is mind finding. The empirical results show that poverty has a strong, negative, and robust effect on economic growth. Countries with higher poverty rates tend to experience slower long-term growth. In contrast, the direct effect of income inequality on growth is fragile and highly sensitive to model specification, often losing statistical significance. However, the study finds that inequality still matters because it indirectly affects growth by increasing poverty. Higher inequality leads to higher poverty level, which in turn suppresses economic growth. This finding highlights that the growth inequality poverty relationship is interconnected and cannot be fully understood by examining each variable in isolation. The fifth point is conclusion. The study concludes that poverty reduction is a crucial prerequisite for sustained economic growth. Income inequality is important primarily because of its role in exacerbating poverty rather than through a consistent direct impact on growth. As a result, development strategies that focus solely on increasing economic growth without addressing poverty and inequality are unlikely to achieve long-term success. The author emphasized the need for inclusion growth policies that simultaneously promote economic expansion, reduce poverty, and manage inequality. This conclusion carries important implications for policymakers, particularly in developing countries seeking sustainable and equitable development outcomes. And then I will explain you about the second journal. The first point is the background of the study. The study is grounded in the critique of conventional development analysis that relies heavily on economic growth rates as the primary indicator of economic development. While economic growth is essential, it does not necessarily reflect improvement in social welfare, income distribution, or regional equality. In the case of East Java province, economic growth has consistently exceeded the national average, yet this achievement has been accompanied by persistent income inequality, uneven regional development, unemployment, and sector imbalance. Many districts and cities show characters of being economically advanced to social lagging. Previous studies have indicated that such growth pattern fails to improve overall welfare. This situation motivates the author to introduce the concept of qualified or quality economic growth, which emphasizes not only the magnitude of growth but also its inclusiveness, equity, and sustainability. The background of the study highlights the need of development policies that move beyond growth-centric approach toward more comprehensive development outcomes. The second point is the research objective. This study has two primary objectives. The first is aim to map and classify districts and cities in East Java based on indicator of qualified economic growth, identification which region experience inclusive and balanced development and which do not. The second, it seeks to analyze the determinant of qualified economic growth, focusing on socio-economic and structural variables such as industrial development, population dynamic, education facilities, sectoral contribution, and human development. By achieving this objective, the study instead to provide empirical evidence that can support policymakers in design regional development strategy that prioritize quality and equality rather than growth alone. The third point is the methodology. The study employs a quantitative empirical approach using two complementary analytical methods. First, cluster typology analysis is applied to classify 38 districts and cities in East Java into four development categories. The first, advanced and rapidly growing region. The second, advanced but depressed region. Third, potential and developing region. And the fourth, relatively disadvantaged region. This classification is based on economic growth rates and income inequality indicators and is visualized using Geographic Information System or GSI mapping. Second, the study used panel data regression analysis covering the period 2012 to 2016. A fixed effect model is selected based on statistical tests to control for unobserved regional characteristics. The explanatory variables include the number of industry, population size, education facility, human development index, and the contribution of the primary, secondary, and tertiary sector to regional output. The fourth point is mind finding. The finding revealed that only a limited number of districts and cities in East Java achieve qualified economic growth, while the majority fall into the category advanced but depressed, indicating high growth accompanied by inequality and uneven development. The regression results show that the number industry, education facility, and the contribution of the tertiary or service sector have a positive and statistically significant effect on economic growth. In contrast, population growth and the contribution of the secondary or industrial sector exhibit a negative and significant relationship with economic growth. The primary sector and HDI do not show statistically significant effect in the model. These findings indicate that structural transformation, education infrastructure, and service sector development are critical components of quality growth. And the last point is the conclusion. The study concludes that economic growth in East Java remains uneven and largely lack quality, as high growth rates do not automatically translate into inclusive development or reduce inequality. The concept of qualified economic growth provides a more accurate framework for evaluating development outcomes by integrating economic performance with social equity. The author emphasized that policymakers should focus on expanding productive industry, improving education facilities, strengthening the tertiary sector, and addressing population pressures. The development strategy should aim to reduce income inequality and promote balanced sectoral growth rather than merely pursuing higher growth rates. Overall, the study underscores the importance of shifting from a growth-oriented paradigm to a quality and inclusiveness-oriented approach to economic development, particularly at the regional level. So that's all I can explain about the two journal. Thank you for watching.